days, you know. I mean, it's totally different. It was hard work. It was really hard work. But it was good. It was really good. I enjoyed it.
We had pretty good gangs in there. If we got an odd crookie in that, I didn't have to put them off or anything. My men done that for me. I find that I don't think men would go away into camps like they did in those days. We didn't know anything better, really.
There was also a need for a fair degree of ingenuity.
During the harvest, I built a crane on one of the machines, and that was for lifting everything, and tree logs that were sent out to lug it, and when the Bailey Bridge had to be dismantled, I used that to lift the panels and used it to assemble it again, and all sorts of things. If you could read the instruction book and the Caterpillar books, you could do any repair job. But they did it the long way. They started on the outside and worked in. Where if you had a crane, you could lift off big bits and get at it quick.
It was a tough project, but it was one that proved the character and ability of Contract Cultivation and its skilled and determined band of workers. There were plenty of other roading contracts available in the 1960s, particularly in the central Otago area. At one stage, the company had well over 100 staff and 12 D8s working on various projects around the South Island. Roads such as the Northern Motorway and the Kilmog have Contract Cultivation track prints all over them.
Well, the Northern Motorway was done from the up through the bush, and it was all, there'd been a lot of new pine trees planted and that sort of thing, and we weren't allowed to knock them about, and all the soil had to be stockpiled between the trees, and it was pretty awkward to get through there with the carryalls and that, but we managed it.
The 1970s began sadly for Contract Cultivation when its founder, Jock Smith, was killed in a grader accident.
Well, Jock had just come out of hospital about a week or so before, and he had had a hip operation. And we had a new Caterpillar grader, and right or wrong, he would have a drive on it. I tried to keep him off it, but it just wasn't on. And the poor fella, he graded away quite all right for a little while, and then there was a lot of trucks come with big rock to stabilise the fill, and he sort of got in the way a wee bit, and then he backed out of the way, and he just didn't manage to push the clutch in and stop the big machine. After the hip operation, he didn't just have the strength in that left foot to push the clutch in, and the thing went over the bank and rolled on top of him. And being no stabiliser bar on top of the cab, it crushed him in again the steering wheel. We managed to get him out about a half an hour afterwards. We had doctors there, ambulances, and all sorts of things. We got him to hospital, but he must have got hurt pretty bad, but jammed between the steering wheel and the back of the cab. And of course, the poor chap passed away a few hours afterwards. Very sad business.
Despite the tragedy, the company pushed on, working a whole range of contracts, including widening Kaikorai Valley Road. 1973 saw Contract Cultivation make another of its many visits to the Mount Cook Highway. They were sizable contracts. The road needed to be raised and realigned. To put it in perspective, each of the sections the company worked on cost twice the equivalent of the Caversham bypass, which it would come to work on in the 1980s, and the work also required far bigger and heavier machinery. The Mount Cook contract was also significant in that it proved to be one of the last construction camp jobs. Huts and long tram-style caravans sleeping up to 4 men with a cookhouse, an ablution block and a massive workshop. The years following Jock's death were an important time for Contract Cultivation. It was over this period that Don Finney, Another important figure in the life of Contract Cultivation entered the scene, taking over the management of the company. Don Finney's successor, Peter Ashcroft.
Well, Don Finney was the manager, I think when Jock was killed at Cattle Flat, I'm not sure. But about a year later I joined the company, and Contract Cultivation had about 30 of the staff. Pretty good crew of guys. And in the next 2 or 3 years we invested huge amounts of money under Don's leadership. We spent $1,000 a day for 2 years. In my knowledge of the history of contract cultivation, apart from in the heydays in the early 1960s before I was there, it was probably as good as contract ever got.
By this stage, Contract Cultivation had the skills to take on a varied range of projects, building foundations for the Dunedin electricity building, developing the Roxburgh airstrip and the Taieri flood protection scheme. The latter was an important job designed to contain the persistent flooding that was dogging local farmers. Nature has a habit of showing who's boss. No one knows better than the hardened veterans of the earth-moving industry. The Abbotsford slip of 1979 was a chilling reminder of the ability of the land and the elements to bite back. Thousands of tons of earth and dozens of houses were brought down in the slip. Contract Cultivation spent months on the site, including sorting out the damage to the Green Island Rugby Club grounds at the bottom of the massive slip. The roading work also continued, with big projects such as the Caversham bypass, as well as smaller road straightening and widening contracts. There is no longer the same sort of demand for new roads. Contract Cultivation has diversified increasingly into drainage work, excavation, and even some port reclamation. In some ways, the company's come back to its roots, in a full circle of more than 60 years circumference. But what was it that made this family company a success? Recently, a gathering of past employees and many other people who had associations with Contract Cultivation gave some clues. The big turnout was in itself testament to the regard in which the company and the Smith family is held. Talking to those who knew him, the central personality of Jock Smith played a big part.
Jock Smith was a very good boss, and he did treat us really all like his family.
Yes, yeah.
We were just like his
just
family.
part of it.
And you know, he would do anything for us that we needed. In fact, one year while I was there, it was during festival week, and in those days they used to have a festival queen, and so Contract Cultivation actually sponsored me to enter that year, and he treated me as if I'd already won, because he carted me off to interviews and functions in his wonderful big Nash car, and you know, I think I only got fourth, but that didn't seem to matter because I got the flowers and the chocolates and all the good treatment.
He would ring me and it would be weekend, and he said, "I want to talk to Grace." That was my wife. And he said to Grace, "Look, how'd you like a picnic on Sunday? We could go down to so-and-so, a nice river there, and we can do this and this and this." So get into that. Taz was only a small child at that stage. And so the families would set out, and on the way down he'd say, "Look, I've got all the documents for a contract in this area." He said, "While they're picnic, we can go down and have a look." And that was always the little trap.
Being born into the company through my dad and mother, every Sunday our drive would be out to look at a job. We got out a lot, but we'd sit in the car for hours on the end and watch old Alec over there with his theodolite surveying the road, and Jack Sybe saw a lot of country and sat in the car for a long time. Might have been 5 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours. We had to sit there.
Contract cultivation also seemed to attract the right sort of men who could get the job done, no matter what.
Jock seemed to have these, and not only did he have the men who were skilled operators, he had the men who could keep the things going, which I alluded to. And generally it was all for the benefit of the completion of the works. This is why I was always happy to get contract cultivation as the employed contractor, because of these skills that Jock had in collecting the right people for the job, his skill in getting them to do the job, and his skill in hospitality, I suppose. As I say, they often camped on site, and it gave that greater sense of family unity, I suppose.
You work in an environment where you've got camps to live in. You've got a cook to employed there to cook for everybody, and it depends upon the temperament of the people that work there. And over the 3 or 4 years I worked there, the guys that were a bit negative, or whatever you like to call them, for some reason or other they never appeared to stay there for very long, 2 or 3 months at the most, sometimes less, and they were gone. The guys that had better character, better stamina, they stayed. Good crew.
Very close-knit community, really, that everyone, you know, got on pretty well. And
everyone knew one another, and we had our own cookhouses and that sort of thing. We all had to live together on the jobs, and we got away perhaps on very late on Saturday, and we were all there at 12 o'clock on Monday to start again.
It's hard to pin down the exact formula for contract cultivation's success. Powerful machines and skilled men, combined with determined personalities such as Jock Smith, Jack Sybe and Don Finney. Whatever the formula, it worked. Contract cultivation has battled through boom and bust cycles, as well as some of the country's toughest terrain, and can look back proudly on more than 60 years of doing the impossible.